Welcome to another episode of the Limitless Life Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Smith. And if you have not done so, hit that subscribe button so that you never miss another podcast. And if you love this podcast and want some tips and tricks on how to improve yourself, go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are a ton of instructional videos there. You can find the links below. But for today, my guest is Jeff Magnunson. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Fantastic. So, my friend, what is a correlation between what you do for people now and your history as a musician?
Ooh, okay. So as a musician, I was really into that before I got deep into personal training and actually competitive bodybuilding. The musician side of things really allowed me to be creative, really allowed me to get into that flow state and just like gain confidence in trusting what my body wants to do when we're in a situation of flow. So I'll give an example of this. Like the confidence is huge. Like it's something that it's really hard to come by, and it can only really be gained through experience, right? So an example of this is we would be playing like the three of us in the band. There's 5 people in the band, but the 3 of us really wrote all the music, and so we would be playing around, jamming around. And a lot of times we wrote all of our favorite, like we did write all of our own songs. It was all original. And a lot of times when we'd be like in writing mode, we would get into this flow state. We're just jamming around. And the confidence that was gained through just feeling, allowing my body to move to the next note and seeing what it sounds like and just going for it. That's how we wrote all of our songs. And so that confidence led me to realize that when I'm in a flow state, the decision-making process that I'm making is positive. It is good. Good things happen when I'm in alignment. And what ended up happening was I used to be a firefighter paramedic. I was a firefighter paramedic for 17 years. And I was starting to get tired of that. And my body was giving me signals whenever I was in alignment that helping people through fitness and helping people understand their nutrition and become better versions of themselves was where I needed to go. And so it took a while because it's not something to give up a career and go full time into a personal training career is not something to take lightly. But the more that I tried to get or prevent myself from making that decision, the worse things were happening in my life. And the more that I was in alignment with the personal training, with helping people, the more positive things were coming into my life. And so that confidence that was gained through music and understanding that flow state was then transitioned over into basically becoming a personal trainer and having the confidence to tell people what they, should be doing in order to reach their next level, and being able to give people advice from personal experience, from highs and lows. So yeah, I think just the confidence in general was the biggest thing that came from the music, big time. Yeah.
That's pretty sweet. So there's a couple of things that you said in there that I think is really cool that I wanted to stick out or point out. First thing is flow state, and the way that you described flow state, and let me know if I'm off kilter on this one, but the way that you talk about flow state is that it's almost like an inherent trust between the body and the mind. The mind trusts the body, and the body trusts the mind to be able to show up. Do you find that it's because of that balance between the body and the mind, where when we're in a state of flow, it doesn't even feel like we're actually there? Like our consciousness is not there. We're actually in a different world.
Totally. I feel like, and I honestly believe that when you're in a true flow state, it's purely vibrational. You are just a part of all the frequencies that are around you. And that's what allows you to move from one thing to the next, right? Even if you were to make a little mistake here and there, it's like, it doesn't even matter. The other thing that I love, and you kind of said this too, the other thing that I love about being in a state of flow is it's just like, it feels like time stands still, right? It feels like everything's in slow motion and just like nothing is going wrong. It's almost like a period of hyper focus, but also being totally out of focus at the same time. It's like macro focus, but you can still have extreme focus of being completely present in the moment. And I also think that that is one of the biggest factors of determining if you've achieved a flow state or not is you are completely present in that moment and not thinking about past or future or anything like that. You're just there living. And that's why I think it's so hard to achieve, because as creatures, we're constantly thinking of past and future and the next thing to come, and it brings on stressors, right? So it's very, very hard to allow ourselves to get into the present. And I do believe that that's also why a lot of people have a hard time being extremely creative when it comes to other aspects of life.
Absolutely. So something that you were talking about there, about flow state and getting into it and being present with the flow state, it is really, really difficult. And I'm going to kind of put my perspective within a question. So I think it's more difficult to actively seek flow, right?
Yeah.
But it's even harder, in my opinion, to surrender to flow. Because I think being present, there is a form of surrender that is necessary in order to reach the flow that you were describing, in my mind. So in saying that, why is surrendering to flow so difficult?
Because people have to let go of their safety net. Everybody has their own emotional safety net. And a lot of times it could be the discomforts or the stressors in their lives that allow them to continue pushing forward, right? What I mean by this is so many people live their life as in the future, in future tense. When I get this, I'll be this. When I get X, I will be happy. When I do this, or I have to do this and this and this, otherwise X, Y, Z is not going to happen, right? And that totally robs you of the present. And so in order to get into a true state of being present and achieve that flow, exactly what you said, surrender, it needs to happen. You need to realize that you need to let go of the idea that you have any freaking control over what's happening in the future. And that's really difficult for a lot of people to do, because we only have so much control. We have control over how and what we respond to in the present moment. And we can hope that it changes our future, but we can't realistically have any expectation of any outcome. We just have to make the best decision in the present moment. But so many people don't realize that. And so that's why it's really difficult for people to ever achieve a true flow state, right?
Yeah, I completely, I love that. That is very, very well said. Out of curiosity, because we were talking about it pre-show, is creativity able to prosper in a more structured week, or does it have to be all willy-nilly?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought this back up, because this is something that's super important. When it comes to being creative or being, excuse me, when it comes to being a creative and having dreams and ideas, that's necessary to make any big impactful change to an industry, whether that be arts or business. Now, we were talking earlier about how the fact that the majority of people that have made the biggest impact in industry and made massive amounts of money and massive changes to hundreds of thousands of millions of lives, maybe not hundreds of millions, but you get the idea. Most of those people come from an artistic background where an idea is sparked because of something that happened to them or some outside the box thinking from a creative standpoint. And that then got projected and created into something great. Now, you have to be able to hone that, though. You have to be able to take that idea, work backwards to say, okay, if this idea is going to work, I need to see, okay, I need to do this in order to accomplish that, in order to accomplish this, and work backwards to a very fine, simple point so that you can gauge and collect data to be pushing 1% further every single day to get to that end point. Now, a lot of creatives I have found can be a little flaky. And so the work that needs to go in is not glamorous. A lot of it will not allow you to achieve a flow state whatsoever, unless like you're popping addies all day or something like that, right? Just hyper focused. But that's kind of one of the things that I've noticed about creatives is they dream, but they don't necessarily do the not so glamorous tasks involved, right? Whereas if you can either find a business partner, or if you can hone that in and realize that you're just part of this bigger picture, and what tasks you do today in this present moment are just as important as the last tasks you do before you change the world, that's the thing that is required. And that's the work that's being done. So there is a huge correlation between the two. But you can't just be a dreamer. you need to also be goal oriented and task oriented as well.
Yeah, the intention without the action is just fantasizing.
Exactly. Yeah, you gotta actually act, right? And I've had friends and siblings where, you know, we talked about this, where just tons of dreams and wonderful people, and, you know, love them like crazy, but when it comes to actually putting pen on paper to say, okay, let's start, it's like they might start the first thing and then it's just like squirrel in a lightning storm. Off to the next idea.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, oh, that looks cool too. So
woo.
So
it's raining.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Oh, it's not.
Oh, cool.
So how does what you do impact other people's lives?
So when I first started in health and fitness, I was I've had a few coaches, so I've had a few different kind of tactics or ways of doing things that I have gone through personally. All the approaches were different and very good for the most part, right? They're all learning opportunities. But what I found in the industry is that there's so much hyper focus on the outside, on the aesthetic, right? And that's only like the cherry on top of really what the health and fitness industry is. To me, what the health and fitness industry is, and why I love what I do, is because I get to help the whole athlete, the whole person, right? And it starts from the inside and comes out. I could very easily give somebody, you know, a meal plan and a cardio regime and a workout plan, and they'll lose 10, 20, 40 plus pounds and they'll look great, but they haven't solved any of their issues as far as habits are concerned. Their mindset hasn't changed. They haven't had that click where all of a sudden nutrition makes complete sense, right? Where they can go out and be social and not feel like they're, you know, fucking things up and that they've ruined all their progress. So what I do and how I help people the most is by more of a lifestyle coaching approach. I teach them habits. I teach them how to dissect nutrition. I teach them what macros are. I teach them what is required as far as cardiovascular exercise, whether that be just steps or cardio or et cetera, right? I'll give you a secret right here. None of my clients get pre-prescribed cardio ever at the beginning of their plan, ever. I do not give anyone cardio off the hop unless they have a job which is so sedentary that they time-wise just cannot get in their step goal. So it's really fun what I do. And my favorite moment, my absolute favorite moment is, well, I guess there's technically two. The first one is when a person realizes what feeling good feels like. That is like everything to me. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking, like, honestly, I don't know if you can see, but I just got shivers down
my spine. Honestly, yeah, keep going. I think that this is the thing that it is one of the most important clicks. And when it happens, then I believe that is when you were talking about data, I believe that's when people really realize the difference between how they felt and how they feel. And now they can actually compare the two, because a lot of people are resistant to change because they don't know what the other side feels like yet.
Exactly. Exactly. And the evil that we know is always less scary than the one that we don't, right? So, and that holds true. That holds true. But when a person finally realizes what feeling good feels like, there's a transition, like you just said, there's a transition or a click that happens in their brain where all of a sudden the temptation of going off plan, sorry, early morning, this coffee's killing me.
All good.
Where they have this transition, this click where all of a sudden they don't want to go off their plan as much, or they don't want to eat the foods that used to make them feel some type of joy, which it was just a dopamine dump, right? A momentary, enjoyment, like piece of their life. They may not want to indulge that way or in the extreme that they used to, because they know how bad it actually will make them feel for the next 2-3 days when all of a sudden they know how good feeling good actually feels like. So that's my first one. The second favorite part of my coaching experience that I love to have with people is when the nutrition all of a sudden makes sense. So what I love to do is I give, whenever a person joins on for the full one-on-one coaching, they get a meal template, which is like basically a meal plan, and custom macros and calories. So from there, they get to decide how their meals are going to lay out, and they get to eat whatever they want because it's macros, right? But when I say, like, instead of having a person handcuffed to a meal plan, I'll say, like, okay, do you want to, your breakfast is oats and protein and fruit. Okay. But you don't, man, I don't fucking want oats and protein and fruit. What do I want? So you look at your macros, and then I give them some substitutions that they can plug in there. And I say, okay, well, look, you can have a whole wheat wrap. You can have turkey bacon or chicken bacon, and you can have 2 eggs and, whatever, right? So this, but you don't have fat. And like, do you like cheese? Yeah, I like cheese. Do you like guac? Yeah, I like guac. So you look down, you go, okay, on your meal template, you have 32 grams of cheese, right? I'm like, so why don't you just split your grams in half, put half your grams of cheese onto your wrap from your snack, and then look down, you got avocado there, take half of your portion of your weighed out avocado substitution, throw that. Now you have a breakfast quesadilla or wrap with avocado, cheese, eggs, bacon, salsa, all that stuff. And then you just don't. And so it's just like, all of a sudden when they realize, like, the world is totally open as far as calories are concerned, and they can consume it in any way, shape, or form they want. They can have the foods that they want. They just got to make the best choices that they can. And all of a sudden it's just not scary anymore. And they get to be creative and make recipes. That is like everything, because as soon as a person hits that point, it's like the world opens up, and all of a sudden nutrition isn't scary and fitness isn't scary. And they just know what to do. Right. And most of the time when that happens, it's like, my job's done. Carry on. You've graduated my program. Like, go on, have a great life.
It's actually so funny that you say that, because like I haven't actually chatted with anyone else about those two experiences that you mentioned, but I was pondering it the other day. I'm like, damn, if only people just go, this is the way I break it down in my brain. I think people are drowning in comfort. And so when I onboard clients, it's fairly strict for the first 2-3 weeks. And that's just an onboarding phase. And the reason for that is because I find that when people have to become more disciplined and really try to change what they were doing, sometimes it takes a little bit more of a stricter, just dial things in. And then that way it gets people feeling, I'm trying to get them to that feeling as quickly as possible. And then that way, when they feel it, then it's like, whoa, oh my gosh, this is like a whole different world. And I'm so glad that you brought it up, because it's so cool. And it's something that I don't hear many people talking about all that much. People never talk about what it really feels like, the difference between this and that. I very vividly know the difference between when I was drinking compared to now I'm not drinking. Will I have a drink in the future? Possibly. But for the present tense, I know what the other way feels like. And my curiosity to where how I feel could go is outweighing my desire to consume alcohol.
100%, right? It really, like, life, if you want to be successful in whether it becomes fitness, business, like just successful as in emotional growth or anything, it boils down to one thing, and that's self-awareness. That's it. That's literally it. So you just explained the fact that since you have given up drinking alcohol, you feel so good. And will you drink in the future? Yeah, you might have a drink or two, but the self-awareness that comes with that is the knowledge that if you decide to indulge, there are some consequences that you're going to have to deal with, you know, feeling a little bit bad, maybe being bloated, blah, blah, blah. But that's okay. Because if you know that going in and you choose to do that, that's what being a fucking adult is, baby. Like, enjoy your goddamn self. It's life. We're supposed to be here to enjoy ourselves, right? So the self-awareness of being able to make that choice of, you know, if I want to eat a whole pizza tonight, like, I can do that if I want to. Anyone can do that if they want to, but then not being surprised by the fact that tomorrow I'm going to feel like a hot, bloated piece of shit. You know, I'll probably be up in weight, and I probably won't be hungry for my healthy food tomorrow. Does that mean I still do it? Yeah, sometimes. But I mean, I have the self-awareness of it. So there's no surprises. And I think that that's a big also growth phase that a lot of people have to go through. And it's something that I haven't struggled with, but I have unfortunately had to let go of a few clients in, you know, being an online coach, is they weren't participating properly in what was making them feel good, but they were still expecting the same results. And then they had a victim mentality in the fact that they weren't accepting responsibility, as it was my fault that they weren't getting results, not theirs. And there's just zero tolerance for that. So it's like, you do the work. It's adult learning. Like I said, you do the work. The results, how fast you get them, are going to be based on how compliant you are. You know, live as much of a balance as you can, but realize that there are consequences to our actions. And I'm not going to make you feel guilty about either way. You just have to be realistic. So, yeah.
Something I think is, I think every coach, I think every coach at some point has struggles with some variation of that. But I think it's also something I think is really important. And this is what I think of it as is, when I try to address it or not address it, I try to go with really well intentions, like good intentions. And at least I'm like, I have the right intentions, and maybe I'll like say something out of frustration where I just didn't keep myself in check. And then that's when I come back and I'm like, that's when I start thinking, how was I a part of the problem?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes with the self-awareness. And I think self-reflection is, if I said this in the podcast before, or did I don't remember, but, it's like, if you look at a skill tree, if life is a video game and you have a skill tree, I think awareness is like the first part of the skill tree. Once you unlock awareness, then it's self-awareness. That's another part of the skill tree. Then from that part of the skill tree, you go to self-reflection. And I think that when people reach the point in their skill tree of self-reflection, then they are pointing less at, or I find that I'm pointing less at everyone or everything of the whole world. And I'm looking back at myself. I'm like, how am I a part of the problem? Rather than you're a part of the problem. This is a part of the problem. The world is a part of the problem. My childhood is a part of the problem.
Yeah.
And I think when we have that self-reflection, and adding on, going back to what you were saying about making that conscious decision of, will I have the pizza or not? I think with self-reflection, we go from being creatures of whim to beings of will. And we are, like you mentioned, we're literally adulting ourselves on making the decision that works the best. And I find I have this theory that until the conscious decision, the conscious, like, this is the day of, I am changing this, like, it's a very clear adjustment. I find that, or I have found that until that day, or until that moment, we will continue to show up for our inner child the way that our parents showed up for us.
100%.
And I find, and I find like, and I find when I started showing up for, and this is like more like psychology stuff. I think inner child stuff is kind of interesting. I really think that there is, because that's what our ego is in my mind. Like that's how I look at the ego, and if my ego is throwing a temper tantrum, I'm not going to get angry at my ego for throwing a temper tantrum when, one, there's a possibility that I'm not being congruent. That's one thing. And then two, more commonly, the kid's scared. The kid's scared. And so I'm just like, hey, little Kyle, man, it's all good, man. Like, it's cool. It's cool.
I love it.
And so I show up as the role model of not just, I try to think of myself in different, because there's definitely like triggers or like things where your ego stands up and it's like, why is it that you're having a temper tantrum right now? Where is that from? And then if it's like my 22-year-old self, I coach my 22-year-old self. So basically I just have like all these little Kyles, the council of Kyles, all these little characters. And I'm like, nah, man, it's cool. It's cool. And so it's just showing up a little bit differently for like that fear. The fear is not there to harm us. The fear is there to help us understand ourselves better by having that self-reflection, that self-awareness. And I find engaging in curiosity and a little bit of the creativity to envision what resolving that temper tantrum could be. That was the tangent. Holy shit.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love, absolutely love psychology. I went through a bit of a depression, not a bit of it. I went through a full-blown depression back in like 2019, early 2019, and ended up off work for 4 months, just was on stress leave because my moods were all whack. And I was having anxiety attacks. I've always been pretty steady and even, but went through a bunch of stuff and I started having anxiety attacks randomly, and I had no idea when they were coming on. And then just very angry all the time. And I was very concerned. Working at the fire hall, I was really worried that if, one of my superiors tickled me in the wrong way, I was going to black out and harm somebody. Right. And so I went through loads of therapy, and I haven't been since we've been back, but it's something that I still do. I try and do it at least once a month because it is so powerful. And a lot of people think, and this was me too, a lot of people think that you go to therapy when something's wrong, right? And that's true. A lot of times it's easier to do that because then you have a certain goal that you're trying to attain, right? A certain thing that you're trying to overcome, right? It's easier when it's like, this is my problem, let's work on this. When you go in there and there's nothing wrong, sometimes those are the best sessions you could possibly have, because, oh my freaking goodness, I learned so much on the times that I went to therapy. And I'd talk to my therapist, Lauren. She's just amazing. She'd be like, okay, so how you feeling? I'm like, good. I'm like, well, let's learn some stuff. And she would just, ask me leading questions, and we'd find different areas of my life where, like I grew this and I act this way because of this. And it's just like mind blowing. And there's so much power in that knowledge. And I want to touch on something that you said because you're tickling my inner nerd. I used to play video games, Skyrim, the whole 9 yards, right?
Dude, Skyrim was my go-to as well.
Elder Scrolls, Stam Sork.
Hours.
I could solo dungeons, no big deal. Low key flex. Maelstrom Arena. Yeah, I ran that thing on vet like 20 times. Anyway, when you're talking about the skill tree, how you said it starts at awareness and then goes into self-reflection. I feel that it is super important to work and get to that self-reflection state, or create that skill, or start honing that skill. Because what happens in society for all of us is the majority of us, because of our upbringing, because none of this shit is taught in school, how to regulate our emotions or what we are as conscious beings, etc. When you don't have that ability to self-reflect, a lot of us will stay in a state of reactivity, right? Whereas when you get to the level of self-reflection, we have more of a power to step back from an incident. Instead of react, we then choose to respond. And that is where a huge amount of power comes in, right? If you think about when you get angry, like it happened to me literally yesterday. There was a person, I was turning right and into the street into my building, and there's this big truck, and he was busted a Yui, and he like was coming up fast, and I just like reacted. I'm like, what is this guy doing? What an idiot, right? Where as soon as it was over, I kind of felt funny. I'm like, I really didn't have to react that way. I feel like I have grown better to say, oh, this person must be in a rush. You know, they might be having a bad day. You get to take your ego out of it, and you get to say, what was the cause of this person making this decision? And why is it that I reacted that way when I could have responded? Because that has nothing to fucking do with me. Right? When you get to that point, you realize so much that people really don't give a shit about you, and that when things happen to you or for you, however you want to say, the ability to respond instead of react holds so much power. And it's really interesting how your take on life changes when you kind of come to that realization. It's a work in progress, though. It's not easy.
I think it's an everlasting work in progress. And I think that everybody at some point, the only variable from life to life, well, one is whether or not they learn it. But I think for the most part, a majority of people, as they age and they gain more experience, then they understand, wow, I'm not the center of the universe. I think a really good indicator of that change is when the thinking goes from me to we.
Mm-hmm.
And
Totally.
I think it's when, this is how I view it, at least. And same with the people that I've been having on the podcast. Like, I've chatted with you a couple times beforehand. The guy that I had on the other day, Daniel, him and I we had a brief conversation, like barely anything, but we were on the same frequency, and it's because of the similar things that we're talking about now. And I think that shift from me to we, and that emotional maturity, and that taking responsibility and ownership, and basically being an adult, I totally think that there becomes this like collective kind of thought process where I'm finding with each new level, I'm being introduced to more and more, each new level of my self-growth, I'm being introduced to more and more like-minded people, and the people are getting cooler and cooler as I go. And it's less, and I think it's really interesting having that kind of perspective shift, where it has like that whole world kind of thing, because we're all birthed from the same point in time. Right? Like you and I are made up of the exact same atoms, particles, space matter. Same with everyone else. The only thing that separates us is our consciousness.
Yeah.
And I think when people, or at least for myself, I think when for myself, I had to break down the body to build up the mind. And that's also a big reason as to why I like to have the first 3 weeks really strict, is to bring people so far out of their comfort zone that they realize, wow, here I thought I was a level 2, but I'm actually a level 20.
Yeah.
And it's just that introduction where they have that empowerment. And I think it's empowerment that really builds and fosters that kind of self-reflection. And I find it to be competent confidence, where it's just you build up enough information where it's like, oh yeah, I am confident, not because of a way that I feel. I am confident because I know that I'm just going to be able to show up. And I think something that was really cool that you were saying is like about congruence earlier. I think it's so important, or alignment. Congruence and alignment I view as the same things, but it's pretty crazy. What were you saying? What else did you have? Or actually, I got a question. I'll just go with a question because it's cool.
Sure.
When you were going through your bout of depression, what is a tool or a tactic or a piece of advice that you still use to this? Because it was 2016, you said?
2019.
2019?
Yeah.
Close enough, I guess. Close enough. I guess it's the same. Anyways.
Yeah. Whatever.
What is a tactic, tool, or maybe a reframe that you use with your clients to this day that you learned at your deepest and darkest time?
That's a very, very good question. Now, as far as tools that I still use to this day to keep myself regulated, I journal pretty much every single day. It's massive, the importance of journaling. And as far as stress reducing techniques or stress mitigating techniques that I try to get my clients to participate in, we talk about journaling, we talk about therapy, we talk about grounding, we talk about meditation. So any of those things. Now, I'll start at the top. So journaling, I still journal every day. There's only a few times in which I haven't. Most of the time, it's like if we're on the road and I run out of my journal, like I finished it and I haven't found a new one. That happened when we were just traveling here. But other than that, it's like pretty much every single day I'm journaling. And when I started journaling, it felt kind of funny. Like I felt kind of weird, but that was the ego, right? It was the ego telling me like, well, how do you start this? Like, is there structure? Is there like a way to do this? Is there a right way to do this? Right? Is there a wrong way to do this? And what I come to the realization was that I just had to say, like, just write something fucking down. And so the first like the first probably like 3 or 4 weeks of my journaling, it was I'm glad I threw the book out, because I'm sure if anybody saw it, I would have been admitted into an insane asylum immediately, because it was just random sentences in no structure whatsoever written down. The idea of journaling and the reason why it's so powerful is because it allows your logical and your emotional brain to talk. There's 2 ways to get that to be done. One is through writing, the other is through speaking. So your emotional brain really drives everything in your life. It does 99% of the time. Your logical brain only kicks up. It's like your emotional brain is in the driver's seat, right? Just going crazy, doing whatever, flipping people off, or like crying because they're so happy because the sun's shining. Maybe it's not that dramatic. And your logical brain is kind of in the passenger seat being like, hey, maybe we should slow down. Do you think you should put your seatbelt on? Right. And the emotional brain's like, nah, get the fuck out of here. Right. And so writing actually helps those 2 sides of your brain talk. Right. And so all I realized I needed was to get my thoughts out of my brain and on paper, because as soon as I put it down on paper, a lot of times that thought being out there, my logical brain analyzing what I wrote down, say, well, actually, that's not that big of a deal. And then all of a sudden it's gone, it's processed. And that's the important thing. We can't have emotions unprocessed, because they'll spill out in all ways of your life until you're forced to deal with them. And that is actually why I got into my depression, because I was stuffing emotions down, stuffing them down for pretty much my entire adult life. And then I was out of alignment. I wasn't happy with the direction my life was going. And I started to self-sabotage. And then my life, basically everything I had worked for, collapsed. And I was just, I felt like I couldn't trust my own thoughts. And that's why I went to therapy, because I'm like, I was very confident before, and now I'm like, I don't even know if I'm making I can't trust the voice in my head. And that's a very weird place to be. So journaling was one of the big things that helped. And I still do it today. I try and get all of my clients to do it because it's so powerful. Grounding is another really good technique. I prefer grounding over meditation. I have an exceptionally hard time meditating. I don't know why. I've tried. It just doesn't really do it for me in the way that, you sit down and you do your breath work. And I do like breath work. I find that stuff's really powerful. But for me, the way that I like to consider meditating is actually through playing music. When I play music, and if I get into that flow state, that's where I feel like I'm meditating. And that's why I enjoy playing music as much as I do. So that's the form of meditating that I like to do, is kind of playing music. But meditating also super powerful. Grounding, though, I'll go back to that. Grounding is amazing. If anybody hasn't tried grounding, they have to. And this is something, it's a little bit harder to do in Alberta because we don't have like summer all the time. And it's like, it's kind of, you're not going to walk out in your bare feet in the snow and pretend to be happy. But there's something so powerful about taking off your shoes or being in shorts or something and touching some soil and like gripping it in your toes, touching it with your hands, and breathing out whatever you're feeling into the ground. Because I am a huge, it probably is going to sound weird, but I'm a huge believer in the fact that we are all just vibrations and energy, and that it transfers constantly. So if you can ground yourself into nature, into basically the universe or whatever you want to call it, it allows you to process things, and it will bring you back into the present moment, because that is where we can actually heal, is we have to be present. So we got journaling, we got grounding, we got meditation. And then therapy, obviously amazing. And so I try and get all of my clients to do all of those things as much as they can. Therapy is the end all be all, because those are the trained professionals that will get you to realize what your solution to that particular problem is in the quickest, most efficient way possible. And what I learned, the biggest thing that I learned in therapy was that we all know the answers intrinsically. We haven't uncovered them. And so that's why therapists, they're not allowed to give you opinion on anything, which is very interesting. I didn't know that. But when you go to a therapy session, they're only asking you leading questions so that you come to a solution of truth that you already fucking know. And I think that that's really cool too, because then there's power, and like you said, power or empowerment in that, being like, I know that I have the answer. I know that I know what I want. I know how to create the solution to whatever problem XYZ is. I just haven't been shown how to get there yet. Right. And that's another big thing that you and I do. Right. And that's another big thing that we do as coaches, as lifestyle coaches, as habit coaches, as fitness coaches, is we show people the path to their best selves so that they can realize, they can achieve so much more than they even think that they can. Like, they haven't even seen the version of themselves that we have seen. Right. Yeah. So I think it's very rewarding in that way too. So those are some of the tactics that I still utilize. Journaling is huge. Like I said, therapy, I still go to fairly regularly, and grounding when it's sunny enough to do it. Those are my three things that I do really on the regular. So
I have share a lot of those as well. Grounding is awesome. I'm definitely okay with meditation, but I like the reason why I like it, and breath work for sure. I'll always go with breath work, because then it takes us from our mind and into our body. And I think we're spending too much time in our mind and not enough time in our body, and that's when we start to get all messy. But for the meditation, the reason why, because I'm just always thinking, like, how I'm speaking right now, where I'm just like blah 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 blah. That's how I'm thinking, and so I like the challenge of trying to sit in silence. Or I just try to and if I start if I start going in tangents, then I go revisit the breath. I'm like, count to 10. So I do it as a challenge, just because there's a Japanese proverb, like, when you can master the enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. And what more of a challenge is there than sitting in your own thoughts? It's hard.
It's
hard. So that's the reason why that's my reframe to meditation that got me more interested in meditation.
Totally.
And I journal every morning too. Actually, I go with the Daily Stoic. So it's just like a script, and then not script, but it's just like a journal prompt, a question. Yeah. And then there's a Stoic philosopher quote, and then there's a little blurb about it. That's my tactic. Maybe I'll just leave a link for the Daily Stoic in the description below. But what is your kind of structure, your routine, or your prompts for journaling?
For journaling. Okay. So now it is actually fairly structured. I always start with the date on the top, and at the very top of the page. So the date is on the right-hand top of the page, and on the left-hand top, like basically where the title would go, I always put good morning. I always greet myself, right? Then what I like to do is a brief recap of how my previous day was. Yesterday was really good. I did this and this and this. This made an impact on me. Then I go into what my day is looking like today. And then after what my day is looking like for the day, I always, by that time, usually the juices are flowing enough where I can start writing out my thoughts, whether things are really great, whether things bothered me, how I'm feeling about certain aspects of my life, and that kind of thing. Sometimes those are really long. Sometimes those would be like 2 pages where it's just like I'll start going and my thoughts will be rolling. And then, 45 minutes will have gone by and I have 2 pages of just me writing down things that I didn't realize had as much of an impact on me as they did. Right. So it's always good to get those down. And then what I used to do, which is really powerful, and I'm not quite sure why I stopped doing it, but I should get back into it, is gratitudes or affirmations at the end. So I like the gratitudes are really cool, but I found that I had more power in the I am affirmations at the end. So what I like to do is I would take 4 or 5 goals that I have that I want to see the direction of my life move into, right? So for instance, one of the goals being I wanted to have a full-time personal training business with 2 employees making X amount of money a month. I'm not going to say it out loud, but X amount of money a month. Kenzie and my relationship are thriving and we're traveling the world. Like there's always 4 or 5 of those that I write. And what's interesting, when I look back over the previous 2 years, since I've been like doing this, like the affirmations anyway, what I've noticed is as my life progresses, I have accomplished every single one of the affirmations that I've written down, with the exception of getting my IFBB Pro card, which is going to happen eventually. But it's just very interesting how when you put to paper what it is that is important to you and what you're going to work on, how the universe listens and how maybe in a sense you start pointing yourself in that direction. So that's how I structure my journaling. It works really well for me. Like I said, though, at the beginning, it wasn't like that. It was just like random sentence, random sentence, random sentence, like scribbled like a madman. Like, this is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking. No structure, didn't make any sense, all over the place, did not flow. So I just like, I feel like that's important because when people start, a lot of times they don't know how to. And you just have to realize that this journal is for you. It's not for anybody else. And if anybody else was to read my journal, like Kenzie's allowed to open my journal and read it anytime, but she just has to come to the realization that what I wrote down is how I'm feeling at that moment. And it may not have any hinge on how I'm feeling now. Right. So no one should feel scared or stupid or anything like that about writing down random thoughts. It's just literally a tool to help us process our feelings, because if we bottle up our emotions, we'll eventually explode, right? That energy has to go somewhere. So why not get it out? It'll help you sleep at night too.
Yeah, having the outlet is so helpful. So something that's crazy. I journal, you journal, Kendra journals. I imagine Kenzie journals too. And there is a majority of people in history that have accomplished great things in multiple realms that all have journaling in common. We have Leonardo da Vinci. He journaled a whole bunch of stuff. He was one of the greatest polymaths of history. We have Abraham Lincoln. He journaled a lot. Marcus Aurelius. Meditations is actually just a collection of his thoughts, like what you said. Those were his thoughts at that point in time. No one else was going to read it. We have, I believe it's Jim Rohn that says, when you think it, ink it.
I love that.
So then we actually like reflect on it, right? So there's thousands upon thousands of examples of the importance, the strength, the possibilities that journaling can afford us, to the point of changing our character and changing our identity and changing what we've been accomplishing, right? Mm-hmm. So, and I do the same. I recommend my clients do a journaling practice. I think of like prompts as well, just to get them started, because just thinking of what to write is so funny. It's like, why are you even thinking at all? Just go. Yeah. So
totally. Well, and that's so funny. You said I've never really thought of it this way, but it's like So you put somebody down with a journal and they go, I don't know what to write, right? I don't know what to write. But their mind is thinking 1,000 things. I don't know what to write because I don't want to feel stupid. I don't want anybody to read it. And I don't want XYZ, judgment, ego, react. Why not write that down? Write literally everything you're thinking about how stupid you're going to feel journaling if somebody reads it. Write that down, because then you're going to process it and you're going to get the fuck over it.
So in saying that, so this is kind of an interesting question. What do you think compels someone to feel so special that something that's worked for thousands of people wouldn't work for them, so they don't partake in that action of journaling?
You know, that's a really tough question. I think it has something to do with definitely ego. There is a large ego component that is part of that, and I find that it's with people that have this idea in which I've tried a million things and nothing works for me. A lot of times they haven't actually given enough time or enough true effort into completing something. Now, when it comes to journaling or even fat loss, for instance, I'll give that as an example, because this is kind of like what I have dealt with more in this aspect, right? I've tried so many things and nothing works for me. It's like, well, the last time I checked, I've never met anybody in which thermodynamics does not work. I've not met one unicorn in which that concept does not apply to somebody in an energy balance, fat loss kind of journey, weight loss journey, I should say. So this whole idea of where that stems from, I think some of it has to do with a victim mindset. Some of it has to do with ego. And I just think that there's not that level of being really a humble human to participate in the effort and do the work that's not glamorous in order to get you to the point you want to be. I think that's really where it stems from. It's just ego, maybe a lack of emotional growth and development, and not wanting to take full responsibility for your actions. I think that's where it probably stems from. That's a tough question, though. Thanks for asking that.
Not bad, eh? I ask myself questions while I'm out for a walk, and I'm like, that's an interesting one. So then I just kind of play around with it. And so I just make a note of it. And I forgot about it until just now. And I'm like, oh, that's a good one. Another correct question as well. And it can kind of, I'm actually really glad that we went from journaling to how it can kind of be looked at in a weight loss or a fat loss kind of component as well. Because I think when we make the time for ensuring the body is taken care of, I look at the body as a business. A body in a business should be treated the same way. It should not be based off of how you feel. It should be based off of how the facts of the situation, because our consciousness is the CEO, our body is the business. Way back in the day, my buddy Johnny, when I was working in the restaurant industry, I asked him, what is like a tip about business that would be useful? Like, do you have any tips for success in business or anything like that? And he said that when you take care of the business takes care of you. And I think the same thing applies to the body. When we take care of the body will take care of us. Like it's a mental to physical and physical to mental. And I think that it's so interesting to think about it this way, where let's say, and I'll ask you because you went through a solid bout of depression. So if I trigger you, I'm sorry in advance.
Bring it on, baby. Open book over here.
But do you think it could be, I'll just say it as like a statement because it's a lot easier, and then you can give me like your kind of thoughts on it. Because to my knowledge, I haven't really gone through a really deep depressive state without the contribution of alcohol.
Okay.
So I've never had it without that as like perspective. So I'm not sure if I've actually gone through a depressive state or if it was just self-induced misery. I'm still unsure. But I think that there's the thought of, am I too depressed to do anything? Or am I depressed because I'm not doing anything?
Mm-hmm. Yep. That is something that goes absolutely hand in hand, right? Now, I'm just going to touch on something before I kind of elaborate on this theory or concept / statement that you made. Now, when you said, did I really experience a bout of depression, or was it self-induced because of behavior? All depression is self-induced because of behavior, whether you're using a substance or whether you're pushing emotions or whether you're neglecting a certain area. It's all self-induced, all of it, right? Whether, even if you're now this, I hope this isn't taken the wrong way. Even if you're a victim of some kind of tragedy, of course there's going to be sadness and depression, but how you choose to grow through that is going to determine on how deep and how long you experience that said depression. So I really think it's important for you not to downplay the experience of emotional and personal growth that you went through. Okay, that's first thing. Now, as far as being depressed because you're not doing anything and feeling too depressed to do anything, there's a certain level of depression paralysis that comes in to any time where a person's going through a bout like that. Now, I had the opposite problem when it came to my depression. I was constantly distracting myself from dealing with any of my emotions by being super busy. I was working out like a madman. I was trying to do a prep for a national competition and get my pro card. I was, really hyper focused on meals. I had some clients because I've had my business for a few years. I was just doing it like as a side hustle for a while, and just because I loved it so much. So I still had like 15 clients, and I was working full time at the fire hall. And at the same time, it was like, shit was hitting the fan in my personal life and other areas. And so I was distracting myself. Oh, I have no time to think because, I got to do this and I got to do that. And I got to do. And so one of the first things my therapist said to me was he wanted me to first off get off social media, because that's a huge distraction for anybody going through a bout of depression. So that was tough to hit my business hard. 6 months, no social media, no marketing was tough. But he told me that I needed to sit down with zero distractions and just sit there and be okay with that. And man, the first few times I sat there in silence, cried like an idiot. I shouldn't say an idiot. I bawled like a baby, right? Cried because I finally gave myself the space to process some of the things that were trying to come out, right? And so I think that there is some paralysis in different ways that comes through with depression, but there's so much importance that comes with building up confidence through small tasks when you're in a depressive state to get the momentum rolling. Because if you can start building confidence by completing small things like getting up and making your bed, having 2 glasses of water, doing a bit of journaling, meditation, or any type of self-care first thing in the morning, putting yourself together, doing your hair, or makeup, or getting some nice clothes, even if you work at home, dressing up, right? Not like up, but like putting on clothes other than pajamas, right? Getting out for a walk and getting some sunshine. These are all like small tasks that you can do if you're in a depressive state that are going to build confidence, inherently make you feel better because of the result of not only building the confidence, but just physically make you feel better. And then you can get that momentum rolling, and you'll finally, eventually, in my experience, and for some of the people that I've worked with that have dealt with this kind of thing, be able to kind of get yourself out of that depressive state. And then what ends up also happening, which is very interesting, is that creates awareness, which then allows you to get to self-reflection. And when you get to self-reflection, it all ties into each other. When you get to self-reflection, you can start seeing the habits and like the behavior habits that led you into your depression, so that when you start having those habits come back into your life, because they're always going to, it's just what you decide to do when they show up? Are you going to have the ability to reflect and say, this was a behavior pattern that led to my worst mental state and my depression? Do I choose to participate in this, or am I going to deal with it right fucking now so we don't get there? Right. So that's a really good question. I'm also really glad you asked that, because it's really powerful. What we have the ability of processing and completing for ourselves within just our little brains, just our little human brains.
Well, it's cool to remember that feelings follow actions, right? And a quote that I really like that I've heard. Now I'm just going to bust out some quotes, just to freestyle it. But what we go through, we grow through. And I think that growth is the choice of taking action to change how we feel, rather than, I think there's too much of an emphasis on how we feel when feelings don't play that much of a role than we really imagine them to. But something I think is really interesting, at least from a dude's perspective, and it kind of sounds like very similar to yourself as well, is like keeping busy and just doing things to avoid feeling, right? And I told this to Kendra before, where I go, fix it first, feel it later. Fix it first, feel it later. So I have like a delay, and it's just something that I've developed over time, but I have a delay on how I feel until the thing is resolved. And then it could be weeks and it could be months later where I'm like, oh my gosh, why am I upset? Oh my gosh, I think I'm upset from this thing 3 months ago. And I think it's really something that reflecting on the fix it first, feel it later, fix it first, feel it later. I think that for me, if someone else is listening, or if you listen to resonates it, when I fix it first, then the thing is resolved. And I also find that it is because we only really feel things for 15 to 20 minutes, and then the feelings change, right? So that's why when we base our choices and actions off of how we feel at that time, wait 15 to 20 minutes and you may not feel the same way, right? And I find when I am going to fix it first, even if I don't feel like fixing it, and I say fix it just because it's simple, it's resolving whatever the thing is that I don't want to resolve. I'm just resistant to resolving it. So when I'm resolving it, suddenly, I also think to myself, when you resolve it, you'll have plenty of time afterwards to feel it. Like, just resolve it. And if you want to like live in your own little sewer cycle afterwards, then go ahead. But at least you resolved it. So fix it first, feel it later. And that's a micro scale. And from a macro, I find that until I learned to intentionally take the time to feel it after I have fixed it or resolved it, that's when I found myself on a perpetual fix it cycle where things were getting resolved, but the things that were inside that needed to be resolved or felt I'll feel it in peace, in silence, on a walk. I'm like, I just got to feel this. Like, this is tough. Like, I got to feel this. I fixed it. I just got to feel it now. And it could be anything, right?
I'm going to challenge you on something.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I think it's important sometimes, as a man, I'm very much, and have been very, very much the same way. Like, if there's something that is going to affect a part of my life in which I feel safety, I will try and fix it no matter what. If I can get this sorted out, then, everything will be good. And I just, we can move on. Right. But I'm going to challenge you, because something that I've learned is, have you ever stopped in the middle of a fix it cycle to ask yourself if you actually want to fucking fix it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's dive down that one. Tell me your experiences with that one. That's I like that.
Yeah. Part of when I was going through therapy, I've, one of the things I had to overcome was feeling like I had to be the perfect this, the perfect that, I had to be the person that had it all together, right? Because that's growing up. What was important was this idea that, oh yeah, he's got his life together. He's doing good. Wow. Look, wow. I wish I had it together like Jeff. Right. But I wasn't happy. And so it was kind of like, what was going on? And then this whole episode happened. And when I was in a therapy session, one of my therapists, like my most, because I've had two therapists, both of them were amazing. And the therapist that I still have now, she asked me why it is that it bothered me so much if I wasn't considered, the perfect boyfriend or the perfect whatever. And I said, well, because I don't like failing at things. And she's like, okay, well, is it really failing if you're taking care of yourself, right? You can't control anybody else's thoughts or opinions on you. And one of the most impactful things she said to me was, if you're going to live a fulfilling life where you are going to be happy, you are always going to be the villain in someone's story, no matter what. And I was just like, oh, and so that really had to sink into me. And that was one of the catalysts that changed my entire thought process and what really projected me into who I am today and where I am today. Because if I hadn't become comfortable with being the villain in essentially a group of people's minds, I would have never chased after what actually makes me happy and what actually I can create a very large impact on others to, like you said, empower themselves, right? I would have never done that. So yeah, like it's very interesting how that whole thing works. And now whenever I come across something where, the life gets shaken up and it's like there's a big thing that happens, I won't just try and fix it. I'll sit there and be like, well, do I even want this? Like, why is this happening? There's a reason why this is happening. And do I have the desire to fix it or not? Because what is the outcome?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I were to put that into like a tactical utility, like put it into your bat belt kind of, like if I was telling a client what you just said there, I would go with, I got all the clients like, I got all these things going on. I feel like I'm fixing so many things. I'm just like spinning a whole bunch of these plates on these little sticks. I would probably start with, or if I was in the same kind of headspace, I would say, is this worth it to fix right now or at all? And then I'd make sure I would sit in silence and reflect or journal it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then I would probably follow that question up with, why am I fixing this in the first place? And I think with those two, that team up of a line of thinking would be a cool way for people to, when they feel a sense, okay, this would be used in a time where they feel a sense of overwhelm, they have too many things on their plate, then I would recommend someone write down all the tasks on their to-do list or whatever they need to fix. And then, is it important? Why am I doing it? And go through it one by one. And then that way, I think people can really filter the things that are priority from the things that are believed to be important.
That is a hugely impactful statement that people really need to come to the understanding of. Is this actually important? Like, if I stress about this now and I try and fix this, whatever this thing is now, that may or may not be actually important to me. If it's not important, or if there's no reason to be doing it, you're just putting yourself through undue hardship, right? So yeah, very cool. I like that.
That's really neat. So I have a collection of questions that I randomly ask guests sometimes. And one that I've really been enjoying is, what is something society cares about that you don't?
Oh, something that society cares about that I don't. Well, sorry, go ahead.
You can interpret that however you wish.
Yeah. I think as far as what my experience has been growing up and seeing different levels of status and celebrity throughout my life. I think that the whole clout thing that comes along with celebrities and treating them different, I do not give two shits about. I treat pretty much everybody the same. The only time I have treated anyone different is if they were, for instance, like a musician who's created some amazing works of art that I just truly respect. But at the same time, being a musician that was semi-popular, I suppose, it was different being on the receiving end of that as well. And you've realized that like most of these celebrities, unless they're pieces of shit, just want to be talked to like normal humans. And so I don't care about the clout that comes with celebrity status at all. I think it's hokey, like this whole Kardashians thing and this whole like influencer thing. I think if people are using it to provide insight and help allow people to grow confidence to be better, then hell yeah. But if it's just based on like, look at me, I look good, give me free stuff, I deserve the world, I'm out. I don't care about that at all. Not even a little bit. But I mean, like I said, that comes from growing up being around people of different levels of social status. Like I was lucky, I moved around a lot as a child and as a young teen. And what my dad did was he was a Red Seal carpenter, essentially, who built these very, very elaborate mansions. This is what he did for his business before he sold it. And he built these mansions for these really rich people. One of them being David Bowie's manager. And so like we got to meet a whole bunch of people in different financial statuses, celebrity statuses, and all this kind of stuff, just to realize that they have the same freaking problems as everybody else, but they just don't have the same money problems as everybody else. That's it.
Something that's kind of cool. Kendra and I were chatting on the balcony and we were just like chilling. Even if it's winter, we just like put some blankets on and we just chill outside. We just enjoy it. It's like our chill time.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, or I had a thought, and the thought was to go along with what you're saying as well is, I was referring to Alex and Layla Hermosi specifically for this thing, but I thought about it because they go on lots of walks and stuff like that. It's very similar lifestyles for the most part. The only difference is the bank account. So the lifestyle is the similar, but the bank account's different. And so I said to her that it's amazing that it's amazing from person to person. We feel the same wind that is along someone's face. We feel the same sunshine that is just beaming down on us. We feel our flesh. We feel all the same things, no matter what someone's pacing is. Because even if the price, or even if a bank account went to infinity, the physical being would still feel the same. And I think something that was really powerful for me when I thought of that was there is no difference in there's no difference in, or there's not much of a correlation between how much someone has and how different they feel. They probably feel very similar. They just have something that's slightly different, that is external, that can be developed and can be accumulated. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of interesting to think like what you're saying. When I chat with a celebrity, I want to chat with them like they're a human being. I want to know the person that they are. I want to understand their soul. I don't need to understand what they do. I want to understand their soul.
Yeah. And when talking about celebrities that are in an artistic field, right? Say musicians, painters. The one thing that I'm always the most curious about is, how do you access the part of your brain that allows you to create the way you do? Because other than that, we're all the exact same. It's just somehow people have been able to tap into a side of their brains, whether that be through tactical means in learning, or whether that just be through innate natural talent, right? That has been honed over years. But that's always the thing that intrigues me about celebrities that have true talent in different areas. Now, there was something interesting that you said about the Hermoses and feeling the same wind and all that stuff, and the fact that that we are all the same kind of essentially being, and someone may have different things or a different bank account, but we all feel the same way about certain things. And first of all, Alex and Layla Hermosi, fucking awesome. Love those guys, right? They're so cool. I was really disappointed when we didn't get to meet them at the conference, but one day I will meet them.
Same.
But yeah, right. But that brings me to another kind of topic, which is the concept of being happy versus doing happy. Right now, when you think about the concept of doing happy, what do you think of? To me, what that actually is conquering goals that don't really bring you anything but a dopamine dump in the moment. It means buying something really nice that maybe you've wanted for a bit. It means going on a trip. It means posting on social media, showing that you're super happy. None of these things are bad things, but it doesn't bring you true, pure intrinsic happiness. Being happy means you could sit on your couch in the living room, close your eyes, and feel pure contentment within yourself and where you are in that point in your life because of the hard work and effort that you put in to grow as a human being and all that you've accomplished along the way, good and bad, lessons, the whole 9 yards. That's what being happy is. And I think that that's what gets lost is everybody's trying to live for tomorrow. Grass is always greener. Like I said, when I get here, I will be happy, XYZ, whatever. Right. And that's the trap of doing happy. There's no long-term happiness or long-term fulfillment in that. It's just dopamine dump, dopamine dump, dopamine dump. Goal-oriented achievers, notorious for this. I'm one of them. I had to learn that getting to the goal, the process of progress is the prize, and the goal at the end is just the cherry on top, because as soon as you attain it, it's on to the next.
To piggyback off of that, a really cool. So I understand that some folks would listen to this and be like, "Oh, easy for you to say." Like it's really hard to be a certain way when you feel a certain way. Now, going down that rabbit hole, not really a rabbit hole, but the thought that or the image or the thing that I experienced that I think is fairly relatable is when a friend moves away. I find that when I'm well-intentioned, like I am not selfishly wanting this person to stay, I want this person to thrive, to grow, stuff like that. So if I'm well-intentioned, this is my thought. I may feel sad that they are leaving, but I can be joyful that they are going towards something that sets their heart on fire.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And
absolutely.
I think like more people need to realize, holy shit, like how many times have people been happy for someone, but also sad at the same time?
Yeah. Well, and that's a mark of a true friendship too. And like, I've only had a few friendships like that where it's like, what if this person succeeds, it actually makes me feel pure joy. Right. And that being said, like the reason why I haven't had a whole bunch of friends like that is because I came to the realization that it is very rare to have relationships that one party or the next is not seeking, or not seeking, I shouldn't say, but it's a mutual exchange of support and joy, right? It's very rare to find that. Very, very rare. And as you get older, you kind of understand that. So I've only had a few of those relationships, but when you get those relationships, it's exactly right. One of my best friends, she helped me through a whole bunch of stuff that year, and we were friends before that. A very similar thing happened. She was moving to Kelowna, and I was really bummed that she was leaving, because we were like freaking best friends, right? But I knew that she had to leave in order to accomplish the next step in where she was going, to be who it was that we both knew where she was going and who she was going to be. And so exactly, like, I was kind of bummed selfishly that, oh man, I'm not going to be around anymore, no more, this and that. But it was like, I'm so happy, because yeah, you need to go, right? Go. And like, she's been thriving ever since, and it's been awesome. So yeah, totally understand what you're saying there. I agree.
It's kind of cool, because like, hearing you speak about it now, where you're happy that she is thriving. Now I think it's interesting to think of an alternate reality where your selfishness consumed you, and where would she be at this point, and how would you feel about her at this point? Like, that's kind of crazy to think of. But with what you're saying about with like friends and stuff, I find that I have become I've just been more mindful of my own time, because I'm a very social person. I'll chat with many people as long as they're not like crappy. But even there's not very many crappy people around me. I'm too like lighthearted and positive and logical for bullshit to be around me. But yeah, most folks are in a life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime.
Agree.
And if we learn something, and I reflect on all relationships, I'm like, you know what, maybe how could I have done that? And that's the self-reflection. How was I a part of the problem? Kind of thing, right? Going
That's
back,
right.
man, we're going full circle on a solid chunk of topics here. It's like, woo, it's like,
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, that's just how it rolls. And like, when you say from a flip side of point of view, if there was a big deal being made about somebody leaving or whatnot, for instance, the relationship that I was just talking about, if for whatever reason I made a huge deal and was like, oh man, and this and that, and she ended up staying, there would be a harbored resentment in the fact that she as a person was not able to be in alignment with the projection of where everybody that really knew her well where she was going. And yeah, so that would have sabotaged the relationship anyway, eventually anyway, because if you stunt the growth of an individual, you stunt the growth of the friendship and the relationship. And that's, you just can't do that. You as friendships, relationships, romantically, whatnot, if you're able to grow together, then generally you can stay together, right? Or in contact, whatnot. But if you try and fit somebody into your little box of safety where you feel comfortable having them, it's doomed to fail.
totally. And something I actually just thought of with that kind of a specific scenario, just because I'm really thinking of different ways of thinking. In the position that your friend, let's say it was the alternate reality where you weren't supportive and you were selfish. And let's say it was your friend that was struggling between the decision to stay and to make you feel good, or leave to fulfill her desires. If someone else were to be in that same kind of scenario, or if I found myself in the same scenario where I was her, I would ask myself the question of whether I would want to live with the short-term guilt of leaving, or the long-term resentment of giving in.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. And I mean, back to the self-reflection part, it would be important to ask yourself what the relationship is worth if a person's so selfish enough not to want your best, right? So yeah, we all have like what our desires and kind of hopes and dreams for where our friendships, where our relationships, where our lives are going to go. But it's that support of not having friends with ulterior motives, which is where you find the true test and the true friends that come out of the word work. And that's why I have so few really close friends. And I think that's kind of what it is. I think if you have a massive group of like best friends, I don't think that those relationships can be much further than just barely subsurface, right? At best, because you're going to piss people off if you're being your true self eventually.
100%,
You're going to
100%.
outgrow people eventually. So
Yeah. Well, it's either you're going to grow or you're just going to, well, yeah, you're just going to, I think if, okay, this is kind of a cool thought. I think that when someone is aiming to pursue a particular goal, that means that their frequency, their level, their frequency has to be raised. And the people around us, as we are pursuing a better version of ourselves, our frequency is increasing, and the people that are around us can either increase their frequency also, or try to pull our frequency down to meet theirs.
Yep. 100%. 100%. And that's why that whole saying of, in a group of 5 people, you're the 6th, because you are the company you keep, right? If you're keeping company if you're trying to be a successful business owner, entrepreneur, professional athlete, whatever it is, if you're trying to achieve some level that you have not attained yet, and it's important to you and you want to put in the work, you can put in all the work that you want. But if your close community and your close network of your 5 people you spend the majority of time with are out, partying on the weekends, working their standard job here and there, whatever, with no hopes or dreams, and they're just existing. And that's okay. If they're happy doing that, that's totally fine. But if you're trying to achieve more and you're still in that crew, it's not going to happen. You'll never reach the level that you need to be pushed into the growth that you want to see if you're surrounding yourself with that community. And that's what's so neat about like going to conferences like where we met, and like just meeting the people that are more growth mindset, more open, more self-aware, is you end up learning a lot about yourself. And then you start creating a new network of people that are vibrating at higher frequencies. And then that pushes you, right? That pushes you to even higher places. And so it's really cool. I like that. I totally agree.
I think that's in the positive side of the spectrum, where we're hanging around people that are thinking like us, but in a way that is well-intentioned, rather than I'll call it the cult of victimhood, where people have the same thoughts, but it's bringing people down. I think it works in both directions. The thing that I thought was interesting is that was my first time at like an in-person conference, and I've never experienced that hype, or not hype, that frequency. Like I felt, and Kendra can attest to this, I was shaking most of the time, and it was just out of excitement. And I'm like, I don't even know why I'm so wired. Why am I so wired? I didn't have that much coffee today. Oh my gosh. But it's because everyone else was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Their frequency was up. So I'm like, it's either I'm going to freaking join them or I'm going to be the only downer. So I joined everyone. It's freaking
Well,
cool.
you can't, when you feel that, it's infectious, right? And unless you're frightened by it, right? And totally not ready for it, it is absolutely infectious. If your mind is open and your arms are open to receiving it, there's no denying it. Once you feel that, it's like, it goes back to what feeling good actually feels like. Once you feel it, you can't do anything but want to get more of it, right?
Absolutely. Well, my friend, we are at the top of the hour, and
Yes.
we went on, and that was also a really good end point that I really want. I love that, because that's like a really good full circle conversations. I will definitely say, like, this is a really constructive, productive, imaginative, creative conversation that we had today. So I just want to say thank you very much for providing such a wonderful experience, for being a badass guest.
Yeah.
And main thing on that one, I just have 2 questions that I want to ask you.
Awesome. Just also wanted to say thanks for having me on the podcast. We vibed right off the shot when we finally got to actually meet each other, because we're from the same city, which is really funny how I worked at the Evolve North for like a short period of time. So I don't know how we never ran into each other, but it's been really nice to connect with you on this level and have these good conversations, because these are important. These are part of the human experience and help us push boundaries and grow and evolve emotionally. And so this has really been really fun. So thank you very much for having me on.
My pleasure. When I start doing in-person ones, we'll do another one for in-person, because I think then people will be like, what's this energy people are talking about? And it's like, so that'll be kind of cool. So, my friend, I got two questions for you. First one, to set the scene. You're on your deathbed. Loved ones are around you. None of your content exists. This podcast does not exist. Anything you've ever written does not exist. Pretty sure you got the point on that one. What is one piece of advice that you would want to pass on to the people around you? Go.
The only thing that's real is what is happening right now.
Nice. Okay, that's a good one. Okay, I like that. I like that. What inspired that one?
Just life lessons along the way, realizations that hopes, dreams, and expectations are all nice, but all we really have is what we're doing in the present moment, which affects everything in the future, but we can't really control anything that is to come to us, right? So might as well be here and appreciate what we have right here, right now, and in front of us, and live life as much in that idea as we can, because otherwise life's going to pass us by, and the good old days we'll look back on and not even realize that we were part of.
That's damn good. Final question. How would you define living a limitless life?
Oof, I love this. Limitless life essentially means to me that I can do anything that I would like within an appropriate timeline. So if I want to go travel, it means that, okay, I can go travel. If it means I want to go see a conference, take an education course, learn, etc., that's what it means. It means having no boundaries in which I can attack something which is going to aid in my growth and experience as a human being.
Nice. I like that. All right, folks, that is what I've got for you in today's episode. Jeff, my man, thank you so, so much. If you've loved today's episode, please do me a favor right now. Share it on your Instagram stories and tag me with the handle @WarriorBodyKyle. Along with Jeff, where can people find you?
You can find me, excuse me, man, oh man. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook. Instagram is where I spend most of my time. I'm at Magnunson.athletics. So give me a follow, hit me up, and let's chat.
That's amazing. So be sure to share it in your stories, tag both of us. This is one of the ways that we grow. And until next time, I hope your day treats you as good as you look.